on this part. So slide 9, we're looking at easy to digest and prebiotic foods. So anything with soluble fiber is considered a prebiotic. And there's lots of diets out there, the GAPS and some of these small intestine bacterial overgrowth diets that really want to be careful with. They want to be careful with soluble fibers because they do feed good and bad bacteria. So, the takeaway here is that these people are really, really bad off, and we're using these fibers hopefully to feed the good bacteria. And these are foods that aren't going to feed a lot of yeast. Like fruit has a lot of soluble fiber in it, like apples and berries and things, but we want to be careful with fruit on the cleanse anyways. So the foods we're listed here are great. Chia, flax, fenugreek, psyllium seeds for some people, or psyllium husk. And then we've got our yogurt and our kefirs. And, the beverages there, keep in mind the beet kvass, the K-Vita, and if you make homemade probiotic sodas out of fruit juice and add kefir whey, or even you could make a fruit juice or buy a fruit juice and then add a couple tablespoons of beet kvass into it and a pinch of salt. Put that in a kombucha bottle that's been well cleaned and let that sit for a day or two, and it'll start to get fizzy, and that's a great beverage also. So keep that in mind. And then your yogurt and kefir cheeses with your added salt. And I mentioned this earlier that when you have that leftover whey and curd, you can add salt to the curd and your spices, and then let it drip, let it hang from where it is, and let it just drip for a few days with in the bag or the sheet or the leftover shirt or the cheesecloth or whatever. So one of the things that came up was my yogurt or kefir dripped right through. So what that means is that your thread count is too wide. You want a tighter thread count, so more higher thread count. They talk about in the clothing textile industry. So you want a higher thread count so it leaks through, but not the solid part. So get your strainer tighter. So if you're using cheesecloth, you're gonna have to do 5, 6 layers of cheesecloth potentially to make sure it doesn't all drip through. And that's why I don't like using cheesecloth for this part of the procedure. And then whatever you use, you can tie it up in a knot, is how I do it, and then kind of hang it from something, let it drip into a bowl or a sink. And I let it go as long as 7 or 8 days. And if it's in a bad environment, it'll start to mold a bit. You can cut the mold off and use the inside parts like with any cheese. But after 7 or 8 days, obviously, it's really hard and more closer to Parmesan. But this cheese won't get hard like Parmesan. It'll just get more and more crumbly. So that's something you guys can experiment with, and highly encourage you to do that because it's a lot of fun. The cream cheese is great for salad dressings like the healthy ranch dressing. You use yogurt or kefir and then that kefir cheese along with it, but that's with the herbs. That's just a delicious dressing, legal within the cleanse too. Let's move on to slide 10. So fruit, okay, if not suspect yeast. Well, if you suspect yeast, I just sent out a yeast questionnaire and a candida spit test, and then a few other things we had talked about basically in class. But if you suspect yeast, really the main one is that you've had antibiotics pretty much any time in your life or multiple rounds of antibiotics. The more you've had antibiotics, the more you should suspect yeast. It's just a no-brainer in my world. And also if you've had corticosteroids like steroid inhalers or steroidal drugs, been in the hospital for any length of time, had a history of craving sweets and eating a lot of fruit, then especially sweet cravings, candy cravings, and that's a really big sign there. And then spices to focus on this week. So go ahead and eat fruit if you want, but if you're trying to lose weight and you're trying to get fungus out of your body, you're going to need to commit to an anti-fruit diet. I myself went a year without fruit. I feel like a broken record because I say this every cleanse to different people. And my girlfriend went more than a year without fruit. I have to get her to twist her arm to even eat it now because she's so anti getting any yeast in her body. But I think that fruit at this point will be very helpful for her, especially ripe fruit. So keep those caveats in mind. Spices to focus on are listed here. I love them all. Herbs we could talk about. They're just some ideas there. Like mullein and echinacea and elder are more clearing of things. Especially echinacea and elder are more like antimicrobial. They are in a couple of the traditional medicinal formulations for colds and flus. And you don't need to take them during colds and flus. You could take them actually during the cleanse, and it would be great during week 1 especially. And there's some detox teas out there. Traditional medicinals is really the way to go. And then mullein's more for clearing the lymphatics around the lung. It'd be a great, it's actually growing around the county right now. It's got fuzzy little, like really soft leaves, and then it has a yellow, pretty yellow flower. And comfrey and marshmallow are soothing agents. So you need to really qualify if you're going to be taking herbs and actually speak with me in person, or we can make you a custom herbal blend, which we didn't do that for anybody on the group, but if you're doing this long distance, we may have actually recommended some things for you. And then goodies, keep in mind there's the same as you put in last week's. I didn't change this at all. If you're a blood type O, you might suspect coconut and avocado to lower your energy, however, and except for coconut oil. And then let's move on to slide 11. A couple of big points is watch your food chart. So legumes, we're allowing the lentils and the lima beans and the split peas. Really soak those for 24 hours. The dairy that's indicated is ghee and butter and kefir and yogurt. If anybody has an argument for any other form of dairy that's a probiotic form, then email me or email the group and we can discuss it. People can make the argument that cheese is also a probiotic, and that's why we're allowing the kefir and the yogurt cheese, because those are going to have good forms of salt in them. That's my argument against commercial cheeses, is they're using crappy salt. Now the contradiction here is, try and keep your flesh foods to a minimum, but use them as you need to for your energy. They're going to slow down your cleansing. But if you're out there working in the world, then, have your protein foods. And if you're going to indulge, then have a steak, or, have some turkey or some chicken or fish. So that's your indulgence, not the carbohydrate foods necessarily. And we don't want any frying, sauteing, heating of oils in any way, shape, or form if you're trying to cleanse. The raw foodists really have it down right in their cleansing. They just don't heat oils. But they use a lot of oil. You can, and I'm all for that. Just don't heat your oils. And if you're using an already heated oil like ghee or clarified butter, in the process of clarification, you are heating the oil. But I'd still prefer you didn't fry with it. If you want to just melt ghee into your vegetables, that's great. But better off just saving it and using butter at this point, especially the Kerrygold unsalted is a great, great butter. Slide 12. Keep that focus there for emphasis. Veggies. Keep those chia seeds pumping in. You could live on those. You could basically pour hot water over 1 cup of hot water over 3 tablespoons of chia seed. I found as a great slime recipe. Just if I'm just like, oh, I don't want to eat, I'm not hungry, and then I just take spoonfuls of that throughout the day. But that's the ratio: 3 tablespoons of chia, 1 cup of boiling water, hot water. Put it in a jar, shake it up. Sometimes I've even lived on it during seminars where I don't bring any other food besides standard processed pills and chia seeds. And I had a great weekend, actually. Pretty good energy just living on that. And they had a little bit of lunch meat, and which I ate and had a horrible stomach ache. So it just told me that I shouldn't be eating commercial grade lunch meat. Like, I don't know what it was, turkey or chicken or something. So those are smoothies or soups and broths. Think easy to digest. Liquid foods are going to be easy. And then also keep in mind you're keeping your carbohydrates, which that includes beans and lentils, lima beans, etc., etc. Those count as your carbohydrate ration for the day. So 1 or 2 1-cup servings of carbohydrates, and check your dietary ratios. Handout. So if your energy falls or you don't fall within the parameters of a good feeling after a meal, then probably should be not eating carbohydrates. This is another slide that we referred to in group, and the gist of it is I'm going to let you read it, you as the participant in the cleanse, and just keep in mind that this is a physician, and during a physician's conference, high-level PhDs and things, and I just love our consciousness is a composite of 90% microbes and 10% us. Our thinking is shaded by the microbes thinking through us. Keep that in mind when you have cravings. There's a die-off, and as they're dying off, they're going to get pretty demanding down there. I have a lot of experience with this, especially with the yeast die-off. My energy was never lower than when I had a violent attitude towards the critters living in my body. So do not approach your critters with violence. Do not approach your belly. Do not send thoughts of violence that you're going to nuclear bomb them or explode them or kill them with herbs, which all we're doing in terms of truth is we're just weeding the tree a bit. we're weeding the weeds around the tree, we're getting rid of the dead leaves, so that we can all live together in harmony. That's the message we want to send. This is a repeat of last week. I loved the idea that the connections in Chinese medicine, that sadness and joy is the small intestine and the heart, fire element. The worry and sympathy is the digestive system, how we digest experiences also. The grief respect, part of the metal element, or the lung and the large intestine, how when things are rotting or falling away or in transition from one thing to the next, we need to grieve and respect and move on. Fear, reassurance, and trust is the water element, or the dream, the new dream once we let go of the old. Anger, compassion, and action is the wood element in Chinese medicine. That's how we bring our dream into manifestation. And then the fire element, back to sadness and joy. That's how we bring it into form. The wood element is the beginnings of how we bring it into form, and the fire element is the action of. In the men's work, we talk about the warrior, the direction of the south, the direction of the warrior. And we have to allow ourselves to feel sadness, to feel joy. So don't suppress your sadness. So we referred to this earlier. Biofilm is a normal coating over the intestines. Slide 15 and 16, you can slide back and forth. So most people do not have a normal coat, although it's probably not going to show up black like it does in some of the cleansing books of people passing mucoid plaque. But all the things we said here, when we overeat, when we eat bad foods, eat too much food late, this is what happens. And the normal coating, if you look at slide 16, there's a normal coating, and like that little guy on the right, the left-hand side of that slide, slide 19, we want to make sure our digestive capacity, our spleen qi, has got our villi, which that's one of the cells that separates the food from our own body. And those cells are born and they die and end up in the stool. Fully 1/4 to almost 1/2 of our stool can be dead microbes and intestinal cells being sloughed off, as you can see on the slide on the right. So undigested food getting absorbed. You can see that guy on the right there. He's not real strong. They're not going to form a tight junction between the cells. We want tight intestinal cells backed up against each other. So when you see or hear about leaky gut and malabsorption, you can see that guy on the right there. Again, on the left-hand side of the slide, he produces about 3,000 less digestive enzyme capacity than the guy on the left, who's got lots of them in his thick head of hair there, which are called the villi. I think that's a great conceptual representation of this. So what do the critters that live down there that aren't good for us like? They love undigested food. So if we don't chew well or eat too much too fast, they love sugar, refined sugar especially. Microbes like yeast, certain bacteria love sugar too. And the yeast problem can be aggravated if we're in a high exposure to EMFs, radiation, and we've had previous high mold exposures. Mycotoxins are mold byproducts, or mold or fungus or yeast shit. That's what they shit out, are mycotoxins. That's how they make us miserable. Slide 18 and 19 are additional informations if anybody's interested in going to those links. Some pretty fascinating stuff if you're just wanting to read about some deeper mysteries of health in the gut. So I'm going to wish you all a wonderful cleanse. Ask questions, stay involved, stay alert. We're going to go through and repeat some of this next week and the week after, but we're going to be talking about a bit more about yeast and bacteria and Lyme disease and where our trajectory goes if we don't make changes. What we see in the sclera and the iris especially. These are long-term patterns of what we see. And hope you all have a great, great time. And if you're doing this cleanse at a distance or in the future away from the time we're doing this, which is June of 2013, remember to get support around you, email me, set up extra counseling sessions with me if you have extra questions, and have a great, great day.